Should schools turn the heating off in a bid to teach children about global warming? 0207 862 2222, that's the number you need. I'm asking because a secondary school in County Durham had planned to turn its heating off as part of what they called Blue Nose Day. You see what they were doing there? You're so cold your nose turns blue. The event was supposed to teach pupils about climate change, but the school ended up changing its plans after parents raised their concerns. They didn't want to send their children in and have them freezing and shivering in the classroom. But I wonder what you think of this. Maybe you genuinely feel that this is a good idea, a very vivid way, very dramatic way of teaching students about protecting the planet. Or maybe you think making them cold for a day at school would just make them unwell. They'd catch a cold sitting there chilly and shivering. What do you think about it? Do get in touch with us. Let me ask you, Cristo, is this a good idea?
I'd never heard such a bad idea in all of my life. This screams of teachers and people in the school sitting around having not enough time to actually think about lessons and teaching children. Because the idea, well, firstly, it makes no sense. Because if you're teaching a child about global warming, it would make more sense to turn the heating up in the school and say, look, it's going to be really warm when global warming comes, so therefore this is, but to make it colder is completely counterproductive. It's like me going on a sponsored, stuffing myself for famine. It makes absolutely no sense.
Isn't the idea
whatsoever.
That they were supposed to be saying turning on the heating, the central heating, is detrimental to the planet and therefore we should all learn to sort of exist at cooler temperatures, wear warmer clothing? Wasn't that the idea? You can see I'm quite confused. Ava, was that what they were driving at there?
Well, I don't want to be rude, but if you think that global warming is, just everyone getting hotter, then I think that perhaps you need one of these lessons that the teachers were offering.
I do. I need one of these
Send me to the school.
Perhaps if we flooded the school or we had, an ice age in the school, that would actually be more representative about the effects of global warming. But look, I actually thought it was a fantastic idea. I think that children learn through doing, they learn through experience. And what a better way to teach children about global warming than actually experiencing it for one day. I also thought it'd be really good for cost of living. We've got this crisis that we've had for a couple of years. If you wanted to teach children about disparity between the haves and have-nots, a day in the cold and teachers telling the children, look, this is what some kids are experiencing every single day, would have been a really great way to learn. Could be teaching empathy.
On the other hand, Cristo, it's a little extreme, you might say. You could keep them cold for a couple of minutes or something rather than have them freezing all day at school.
Well, absolutely. How about you just say to them, look, there's a door. Why don't we all go outside for a moment? And this is what the cold feels like. Now let's go back inside to the warm. The idea of children having to sit there shivering or in their coats all day in order to demonstrate what the cold is, I think maybe children are a little bit more intelligent than that. And if you want to teach about global warming, how about a blackboard and actually just teaching them in a lesson about what they think might be happening, what will be coming, rather than this ridiculous performative nonsense.
I mean, in the end, the school binned the whole idea. Why? Because the parents kicked off and made such a fuss about little Johnny or Josephine being cold for a day. They just couldn't countenance it. It was a terrible idea. And they protested so vehemently that the school had to can the idea. If your children had been at that school, would you have said, go ahead, let them freeze?
I mean, they weren't freezing because it was sort of the end of September, wasn't it? So, we're sort of still in the Indian summer, aren't we? It's not quite cold yet. I think it's absolutely fine. Just put a vest on. And also, I feel like my entire career, I've been told by the generation above me or the generation above that they had it so much harder when they were at school and, we're all soft and not tough enough. Perhaps maybe younger children do need to get a bit tougher, or parents need to be a bit tougher on their children.
I mean, certainly something like this would leave an indelible mark on a child. I don't mean it would ruin their lives. The opposite. I just mean they'd remember it, Cristo. When something memorable happens at school and you're little, you do remember it. Stands out forever. Maybe it would have been one of those lesson days that was never forgotten.
And I can see that point. And I respect your point about it toughening up children a little bit. That, if it was a toughen up day, I might say, well, all right, I can get my head around that. It's the idea that we've got to sort of, it's also this catastrophizing of everything as well to children. Oh, sorry, this is going to be the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you, so we have to demonstrate this in the worst possible way. And also, if it's the Indian summer, Ava, then why is it called Blue Nose Day? Surely that's counterproductive. At least they should do it in December when it's actually going to be
in charge
cold.
of marketing.
Well, I mean, maybe they should have done.
We're going to be taking your calls
that.
on this. Maybe you remember being taught something of this kind in this kind of way at your school, or maybe you remember pre-central heating days when our noses were blue and so was every other bit of our anatomy. Do you think that now it's time for your calls on whether schools should turn the heating off in a bid to teach children about global warming? Margaret from Devon's on the line. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Hello. Is it a good idea? It would be very vivid if they were freezing and shivering.
I find it ludicrous to turn the heating off for children.
And you don't think it would teach them a lesson? Because the idea was that they'd learn, because they were so cold, it would all sink in. They'd realise the implications of global warming. That was the idea anyway.
I don't think they'd learn at all, freezing cold.
So you would have been among the parents saying, do not do this, it's ridiculous.
I wouldn't have sent my child into school if there was no heating on.
Right, OK. Well, you don't think that being uncomfortable for a day would be such an unpleasant experience that it would absolutely sink in that we need to do something to save the planet?
No, I think they could do it like that gentleman said before on there. Put it on a board and teach them from that.
Teach them properly rather than making them go through it. All right, Margaret, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Anne in Glasgow. Hi, Anne.
Hello.
Hello. What do you think?
Well, I totally disagree with your last caller. I think it is a good idea. I think the children would learn from it. I don't think they would freeze, not in this country. I think they have adequate clothing on. Children could move about the classroom, jump about every half hour or so if they're really cold. And I think it would teach them, because showing them on the blackboard, okay, a lot of the children just think it goes right over their head, they don't pay attention, but actually physically feel it, I think it would mean more to them.
And the fact that Cristo said, but it's global warming, shouldn't you be turning the heating up, making them wear a balaclava in the summer to show them how hot the planet's going to get as it heats up? And Ava's saying, you really don't understand what's going on at all, do you? And the answer's probably not at all. Do you think it would be clear to them that they have to get very, very cold to understand global warming? It doesn't seem to make sense, does it?
Well, in that respect, no, but I think it's from the point of view of the energy. If we cut down on using energy, that is going to help save the planet.
I think that is exactly what they're trying to teach.
But I don't want us to be taught to use less energy so that we're all freezing cold. Sorry, I actually don't agree with that. I think that fine, if we are going to try and be maybe slightly more energy efficient, great. But if you're telling me that the way in which we're going to get people on board with the worries of global warming is that we should all be sitting in our houses shivering, I'm afraid that is not the way to get people on board. That is ridiculous.
Ava?
I do think that that's not quite what they're teaching, is it?
It is. They want the Blue Nose Day.
But they're teaching you about the effects of global warming, and the effects of global warming can be, in somewhere like Libya, it's extreme heat. But then if you look at somewhere like Florida and the tsunamis that they're now experiencing, it's unseasonably wet and rainy. Different parts of the world is extremely cold. It's a very good way to teach. Yeah, but I think you do well to take the class.
My point, I think you just want to see me with a blue nose.
I do.
But my point is that if the point of it is that they're trying to teach energy efficiency, like I say, I don't think you get people on board by trying to say to them that the way in which you save the planet is to be more cold day to day.
I don't know. I just wonder whether it would be one of these things that would be unforgettable. They would remember it. And actually, if you then talked about the winter fuel allowance, for example, being withdrawn from so many people, they would understand. If you talked about the cost of living crisis, these children would get it in a way that they might not have got it before. I mean, maybe they used to say in various cultures, if you want to learn, you must feel. And this way you would feel, wouldn't you?
Yeah, great. So we could do that for absolutely everything then, shall we? I mean, where are we going to draw the line? Like you say, the winter fuel allowance. So let's turn the heating off for for that day, and then the general people that can't pay their heating bills. Some people are having trouble affording food. Hospitals are, as we've just been talking about. Let's starve the children for a day. I mean, what else are we going to do to these poor children?
Wouldn't it be good? You could even teach a good lesson about homelessness through that. Couldn't you?
Great! Let's stick them out on the street with a sleeping bag.
Do you not think it would be good to teach children empathy?
Well, yes, I think that it is nice to teach children empathy, but I'm afraid, having them sleep under a cardboard box and in a shelter for the night is not probably my idea of doing that.
I'm just suggesting that perhaps you could show them, that some people don't have a home to go to, and the best way to do that would be to slightly experience it.
OK, I don't want to go to this school that you're advocating for a homeless day, a blue nose day, a non-eating day.
How lovely the children would be at the end of it, having felt all that empathy. Maybe it's a good idea.
But maybe their math skills might not be that well, because it doesn't sound like there's an awful lot of time to teach them any of the actual skills they need for life.
All right, now we're going to move on.